You gonna give me a spot to be? No? Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I will be doing the fantasy reader tag. I was tagged in this by Pablo Suarez. I'll link his video down below. And I was a little bit nervous to actually do this at first. I don't really think of myself as a fantasy reader. I read so many different genres. I don't really think of myself as invested in any genre. And I'll get into this a little bit more with one of the questions of this tag specifically, but I don't read classic fantasy. Like, sometimes I feel like the whole fantasy genre can be a little gatekeepy. So I definitely got a sense of imposter syndrome when I sat down to film this, but I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good about it now. I think I have some good answers for this tag. I think hopefully some people will enjoy it, and hopefully it'll encourage some other people to get into the genre. Oh, my dog's ball is stuck under the chair. Here we go. Is this better? All right, so let's jump into the tag. So the first question is your fantasy origin story. So I was really thinking back as to what inspired me to start reading the fantasy genre. And I think for a lot of people, it really starts with stuff that was read to me as a child. So my parents both made a point of reading to me and my sister before we went to bed. My mom, it was mostly kind of Nancy Drew books. And then my dad would read pretty much whatever he wanted to read and then just use my sister and I as an excuse to reread books he already enjoyed. So the one that really sticks out to me as really being a good kind of intro to fantasy for me and really getting me into kind of the fantasy genre as a whole is 5,000 Miles Underground. It was written, I think, in the 1910s. So it's a very, very old book. And it's very steampunk and has a lot of fantasy elements. There's giants and ogres and all sorts of creatures. And I have some really good memories. I reread that book when I was older in high school, and just it's a really good book, and it was a really good way for me to get into fantasy. And then I think the other thing that really sparked my joy for a subgenre of fantasy is my grandparents went to Greece when I was a kid and got me this bad boy. I think this is a fairly common kind of Greek mythology starter kit. And my grandpa used to read me Greek mythology whenever he and my grandma would visit. And so definitely, as far as kind of Greek mythology retelling fantasy is concerned, this is what really got me into it. And then, of course, as I started to age up and read on my own, I read the Harry Potter series starting in 2001. So I would have been about 8 years old. Oh, and I guess before I started reading Harry Potter, I started reading the Magic Treehouse books. And like, that was a blast from the past. And another one that's kind of again on the that's on the mythology side is these little bad boys. They're like these tiny little like kids books that are the Greek myths but told from the perspective of Hades. And they're super fun and super cute. And while I was researching my own history for this question, I found that they actually have more of these out now. I think these were all the ones that were available when I was reading them. But I think I'm going to have to go through and buy all the other ones too and reread these ones and read through those. I think that'd be really fun. Oh my goodness, my dog is very playful right now. All right, hopefully we're done with dog interruptions for a hot minute. And then, of course, Percy Jackson later on. I read Twilight in high school, so I guess that's kind of my fantasy reading of my childhood. The next question is, if you could be the hero of your own fantasy story, who would you want to write it? And what trope would you want them to include? So I don't read a whole lot of fantasy. Like I said, I read a lot of different genres, so I really wasn't too familiar with a bunch of different fantasy authors. But once I came across this book in my previously read list, I knew immediately that she is the one I would want writing my story. And that is Maria Snyder, who wrote Poison Study. So Poison Study is the only one I read in that series so far. But I just really connected with the main character, Yelena. she's so logical and she's so well thought out, and I really connected with that main character. And so I think if someone were to write me, I think Maria Snyder would do a good job because I connected with Yelena, the main character of Poison Study, so much. And the trope I would want her to write for me is the reluctant hero, just because I love reading reluctant heroes. Like, they're just so fun. I just really enjoy them. I enjoy like the dialogue that brings up, and just the complexity of knowing you need to save the world, but you just don't want to. And so I think I love that trope. I think it's really great. So Maria Snyder, reluctant hero. The next question is, what fantasy book have you read this year that you would recommend everyone read? And so far in 2021, I haven't read any fantasy, so I'm going to go back a whole year, back to February of 2020. But I think what I would recommend for people is Poison Study. Like I just said, I really enjoyed that book. I think the main character is incredible. I love the lack of the miscommunication to drive the plot. It's great. I hate miscommunication. And then the other one I would suggest is, I assume most people have already read this and or have heard of it because it was very hyped up on BookTube, but Children of Blood and Bone. I loved that book. But if you read that, I would not recommend reading the second one right away. Maybe wait to read the second one until the third one comes out and see if the third one redeems the series as a whole. But if you kind of look at the first one as a standalone, I think it's really incredible, and it's something I would recommend that anybody go pick up because it is so much fun. The next one is an upcoming fantasy release that you're looking forward to. Both of these books, I believe, come out in June of this year, and that's The Poison Heart and Daughter of Sparta. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Greek mythology retellings. And The Poison Heart just looks really good. Everybody who's read the arc so far has only had gleaming things to say about it. It sounds really cool. I mean, I'm a big Poison Ivy fan in the DC universe, and it sounds like the main character of Poison Heart kind of has a little bit of that to her. She's super into plants. She can poison people, so I'm down. I'm down for it. I'll be reading that one in June. So question number 5 is, what misconception about fantasy would you like to lay to rest? And I think for me, it's that epic fantasy is the only true fantasy, because I never would have classified myself as a fantasy reader until like last year. I always thought to be considered fantasy, it had to be, high epic fantasy, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Those are the only ones I know, and that is not something I keep up with. And it always just felt like I was never interested in that kind of writing, those kind of giant tomes of crazy worlds and all of this other stuff. And it was just I was never into it, and I didn't realize that the stuff I was already reading was considered fantasy. Twilight, I read The City of Bones when it first came out, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, like all of these other things. Like, that was all stuff that I was already reading that's considered fantasy, and I just never made the connection. Fantasy is such a wide genre, and I think almost anybody can find a subsection of fantasy that they can connect with, that they can enjoy. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that that it took me a while to put aside. Like I said in the beginning, I think there's just a little bit of gatekeeping as to what is truly fantasy, and I think anything that has those fantastical elements, I think probably counts. And so I think most people can find something that they're gonna love. So number 6 is, if someone had never read a fantasy before and asked you for a recommendation, what 3 books would you recommend? And I would find it personally hard to believe that if someone were a reader that they had never read a fantasy, just because so many of the most popular YA books, especially from my time, were fantasy. So I have a little bit of a problem with the question to start with, but I would imagine if someone is coming to me for a recommendation, that I would think they would have fairly similar tastes to me. So I'm gonna go off of that and not recommend stuff like Chronicles of Narnia or Game of Thrones or whatever, because that's just not stuff I'm interested in. So what I would suggest to them is, you know, if they're into romance, maybe check out something like any of the Sarah J. Maas books. I haven't read them, but what I know of them, they're very romance heavy, or, you know, something along the lines of Twilight with that slow burn romance. Or if they are interested in Greek mythology retellings, something like Madeline Miller's books, either Song of Achilles or Circe, because I both think they are beautifully written novels, and you can enter them with very little Greek mythology knowledge. So I think those are both great starter books, along with, on the romance side, maybe something like that. So number 7 is, what is your favorite fantasy subgenre? And I think that's going to be fairly easy to tell, but Greek mythology retellings, obviously. I'm a huge Greek mythology fan. And then also paranormal romance of some sort. I haven't read any super recently, but I do enjoy them. I was a big twihard in high school till it became uncool to like Twilight anymore. It might be worth a reread of at least the first Twilight. And then number 8 is, what subgenre of fantasy do you not read from? And again, this is getting fairly repetitive, but it's kind of like the epic high fantasy. It's just not really something that I have interest in. I loved watching like the TV, like I loved Game of Thrones. I enjoyed the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films, but I don't think I necessarily want to read that. And then number 9, who is one of your auto-buy fantasy authors? I think Madeline Miller is going to be that for me in the future. I loved Song of Achilles and Circe, so if she does any more Greek mythology retellings, I'm definitely going to pick that up. I'm probably going to enjoy it. And then the last question, number 10, is, how do you find book recommendations? And at this point is definitely BookTube and Book Twitter. So all that's left is to tag some other people. Hi, Trip. I'm almost done. So I would like to tag Lynn Reads Books, Reading with Abby, and Kayla Ray Reads. So I will have all 3 of their channels linked below, so I hope you go check them out, and I can't wait to see them do this tag. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.